Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today, I want to talk about one of the unique maps that's become a lot cheaper in the Delirium League than it normally is, and that is the Tier 15 version of the Beachhead unique map. Now, this map, one that you may have run a fair bit if you played during the Harbinger League, but that's a couple of years ago now, so people have probably forgotten about it. It's the original huge dump of XP reward map that the first one that was introduced. The breachstones that we encounter came a little bit beforehand, but they were mostly about getting unique items. And whilst they do give more XP than a normal map, the versions that were introduced in the Breach League were not particularly extraordinary for XP, except for the very rare Chayula one. The Beachhead's very different in that it's a relatively easy map. It's a tier 15 map with no damage mods, and where it's pretty easy to beat if you're playing a character that's capable of running endgame maps. There's also a tier 5 and a tier 10 version, and they drop less and slightly different loot. They won't drop any maps, and they'll drop no useful crafting bases at all, but they can still drop large amounts of currency. So, when you're running your Beachhead, what you can expect is to get large amounts of raw currency. I've run 8 of them, and I'll give you a bit of a heads up as to what dropped. So, tier 16s, 15s, 14s, 13s, 12s, 11s, yellow maps, and one lonely white map there. Every tier of map is a valid drop on my atlas, so it has, or at least there's at least one of them. So that means that this is what you'd expect. This is also done with a relatively low atlas completion bonus at the moment. Just partly, I've had a slow league start, been busy IRL, so I've ended up, I'm only sort of just breaking into tier 14, 15, and 16 maps now. I'm only at 16 Watchstones at this point of the league. Now, in terms of raw currency, I ran 8 of these maps, and I bought them all from other players, and I spent 157 chaos on them. In returns, we have 5 3/4 orbs of annulment. That's about 27 chaos at the moment. 5.9 ancient orbs. That's another 27 odd chaos. In other leagues, ancient orbs have been very expensive. They were 70 chaos each last league. They're down to 5 this league. And that's just due to the fact that there's no way to use them to create Headhunter. And so as a result, they're just not used very much. 7 exalted shards. That's about 40 chaos. So this lot alone, these premium shards, because all of these annulments and ancient orbs, they dropped as shards, and they've just compiled to this. The premium shards there make up about 100 chaos. 25 raw chaos is 125 or so. Sextants, yeah, another 15, or another 10-ish there, so it's 135. Horizon orbs are just really convenient to have a lot of. They're something that aren't worth all that much, and the reason they're not worth much is because so many of them drop in the Beachhead. But they are something that you always want to have a bunch of. Binding orbs are pretty much worthless, but they do work as an alchemy orb when used on a map. Alchemy orbs, again, there's slightly over 40 of them. That sort of adds up. 40 alteration orbs. Alts are really expensive this league, and they will be for the foreseeable future because crafting using awakening orbs is so powerful. Next we have 87 Jeweler's orbs, Gemcutter Prism, some of these stupid Engineer's orbs, and then some little bits of, just little bits of fluff that add up to not all that much. Anyways, the raw currency drops alone basically pay for the maps at the current prices. Then I also feel like I got a little bit unlucky on Exalted Shards. I feel like you normally get maybe a little bit more than one of them on average per Beachhead map, and I got just a smidgen under one, but that's too small a sample size to be sure. I've probably only run 50 Beachheads ever. Then, of course, that sort of currency section is the main rewards that you're doing this for, but then you get a lot of extras as well. All these maps are freebies, essentially, because I've sustained the cost of purchasing the Beachhead maps from the currency drops alone. Then there's the uniques. Now, there's this silly unique mace that's pretty rare, but not very good. I had that drop for me, and it's just one of those things I don't see very often, so I'll just put it aside. But it's worthless. You'll see 2 sets of Facebreakers. Facebreaker is really broken this league. This one's cheap, this one is not. 790% is a lucky roll. But the thing that's interesting, there's all these pieces of the Harbinger uniques. The Harbinger uniques, when you kill a final boss of the Beachhead map, you will receive exactly one of these. You'll always get one, and they will be, they vary massively in price. The ones that are valuable though are the pieces of focus. These combine to form the Unshattered Will. You're looking at about 80 chaos between these two in current prices. These two combine to form the silly helmet. I can never remember what it's called, but it's like they're about 5 chaos a piece. The other pieces, this is a part of the Rippling Thoughts unique sword, which sometimes gets expensive, but in this league is not. It's kind of cool. If you've never played with it, it's a lot of fun. It feels like you are using Cast on Critical Strike Glacial Cascade, but as a sword. However, it's not as powerful as Cast on Critical Strike builds. The pieces of Brutality give you a physical damage, staff, and then there's the pieces of Time, which are the Flow Untethered, which is a belt that can be worth something sometimes, but is not in this league. Anyways, all told, the uniques add to about 100 chaos there. The maps are probably about 100 chaos at the moment, but I'm just going to say that as a tentative amount because map sustain is pretty high again this league, and I kind of don't expect them to sell. Were I to sell everything here, though, you're looking maybe about 300 chaos for the runs that I've done. I spent a little over 150 chaos getting in there, so that seems like I'm making a little bit under 20 chaos a map, which is serviceable but nothing to write home about, given that these do take longer to clear than a normal map by quite a bit. However, the big difference with the Beachhead, and the reason that I suggest giving it a thought, at least as long as it stays around the 20 chaos mark, is that it gives you an absolutely staggering amount of XP. I started running these at level 89 as a bit of an experiment. Each single Beachhead I ran gave me 37% of an experience level and 6 million XP on each of my gems. Then I kept running them at 90 and I was getting about 22% of a level and still, of course, 6 million XP on gems. At 91 now, I've run 2 of them. Unfortunately, one of them I had a death that was caused by a bad lag spike, but still looking like getting about 15% of an XP level at level 91. And it continues to be extraordinarily good all the way up to level 99. You can expect Beachheads to give you about 4 times the XP that you would get from running an Alkan Go tier 15 map. So there's a lot of XP that you're getting here. The last thing that you can do with these that is really worthwhile is running them in a group. Instead of buying 5 of them or 10 of them and running them back to back yourself and getting, well, let's say you buy 10. You run 10 of them by yourself, you get the XP for 10 runs. But if you run in a group and everyone in your group buys 10 of them, and then you run them as a group of 5, let's say you do it with 5 rather than 6, not quite optimal, then you're going to get the XP of 50 Beachheads for each player, but for the cost of each player committing 10 of them. Additionally, all of the shard drops, the currency drops, will be affected by increased item quantity from having additional players in the zone. So you can expect, if you've got 5 players in there, get approximately triple the amount of loot drops. This will not apply to the pieces of the various Harbinger uniques. It will not apply to map drops, but I believe it applies to the shards. It certainly will apply to everything that drops as pure currency orbs. Anyways, it's certainly a lot of fun to give this a go. If you've never run the map before, don't be afraid of it. It's basically just fighting 12 Harbingers and a bunch of trash in a zone that has no difficult map mods at all. You will have to fight 6 of the Harbingers back to back to back to back to back, but if you're afraid of that, you can always just set a town portal and run to that if you get in trouble. You probably won't though. I think most popular builds these days, and even most sort of middle of the range builds, can do this on pretty dumpster tier gear. Any comments or questions, fire away below. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you have a good one.